constant fighting and arguing in relationships doesn't mean your relationship is broken. It just means how you're handling conflict is not effective. My husband and I are not great at handling conflict sometimes. The other day, we were putting our baby to bed and we were upset at each other and did not speak a word the entire time. That's like half an hour, 45 minutes of existing but not talking to each other. And to make it even worse, I definitely avoided eye contact for most of that time because I was like, I don't want to see you. I don't want to think about you. Like, you're just annoying and bugging me. And like, this is very normal in relationships, but it's a little awkward because I'm a trained mediator and peace builder, so I know conflict resolution techniques. Like, I've been trained to avoid these types of things and have conflict be good. I used to feel really bad that we still struggled with conflict in relationships, but then I realized that I've been trained in these principles so that when we get ourselves in these conflict pits, we know how to get out of them. It's not to never get in conflict or never get in arguments that we learn conflict resolution techniques. It's so that when we do, we know how to get ourselves out of them. We know how to turn conflict into a constructive tool. And so that's what we're going to be going over today, because everyone has arguments and everyone at some point struggles to communicate effectively and be on the same page in a relationship. So we're going to go over that today, talk about the right way and the wrong way to deal with conflict, and talk about principles that help us in our marriage. I'm Talia Nilsson, a certified mediator and peace builder. This channel is all about practical tools for conflict resolution, peace building, and building stronger, healthier relationships. If you're new here, be sure to hit the subscribe button for more videos about creating peace in your relationships. Now let's talk about what conflict is. According to peacebuilding expert Dr. Chad Ford, conflict is the inability to collaboratively solve problems together. So when you're in conflict, you are essentially in a state where you are unable to solve problems with your partner. You are fighting against each other and have lost the ability, at least for the moment, to work together. When conflict arises in a relationship, our first reaction is often fear. This fear is around the conflict itself and the person you are in conflict with. Fear may stem from past conflicts and their outcomes, concern about how things will turn out, or the discomfort of difficult emotions. Whatever the reason, fear is a common response when conflict begins. Now, fear isn't an inherently bad thing. It's one of our biological instincts that puts us into fight or flight mode. This instinct has kept us alive for thousands of years and works great when facing a bear. But in a relationship, it's not as helpful. We don't want to fight or flee from our partner every time a conflict arises. That's obviously not very healthy or helpful. The fear we experience during conflict caught the attention of Dr. Chad Ford, who highlights this in his book, Dangerous Love. He calls it destructive conflict, because when we are afraid, things rarely end well. We're stuck in this fear-induced fight or flight mode, operating from a place of self-preservation instead of connection and love. In destructive conflict, we think things like, I can't do anything about this conflict. Nothing will change unless they change, and it's all out of my control. Destructive conflict traps us in endless cycles of fights, yelling, and hurt feelings, keeping us stuck in constant conflict but with no progress, all because we're afraid of conflict. When we live in this fear of conflict, we completely lose sight of the other person involved and are only focused on ourselves and our self-preservation. We start to view those we are in conflict with as an object or an obstacle, just something to be overcome to get what we want or need. This is what we call an I-it relationship, where the other person's needs, hopes, fears, and humanity don't matter to us. In this mindset, others don't count the same as we do, and their needs are not as important as ours. Now back to my earlier example with my husband. When we were upset at each other and putting our baby to bed, I avoided his eye contact. I just didn't want to look at him or see him. I wanted him to be an it, like we're talking about. I didn't want to remember any fears that he's told me or any needs that he has or struggles that he has. I just want him to be an it. I want to be upset at him and I don't want to look at him. So this is a very real example of how sometimes we see our partners as its when we are in conflict with them and not approaching it in a constructive way. Now this may seem a little extreme and you may think, I've never not looked at my partner or thought of them as an it before in conflict. So let's look at some examples and think to yourself, have I ever said or thought anything like this when I'm in conflict with my partner? If they would just listen to me, we would not have these problems. I shouldn't have to remind them to help around the house. It's really not that hard. If I apologize first, they'll think I'm the weak one. Each of these examples centers on you, illustrating how the other person should act or change in order to help you. It shifts the focus away from understanding them and just places blame on them instead. Now you might be thinking, can a fearful perception of something really make it this bad? Let's take a closer look at how negative perceptions can impact us. In 2013, a study of 7,000 London workers led by Dr. Herman Nabi found that those who believed that stress negatively impacted their health were twice as likely to have a heart attack compared to those who saw stress as a motivator. This connection held true even after accounting for biological, behavioral, and psychological factors. Dr. Nabi's conclusion said that one of the important messages from our findings is that people's perception about the impact of stress on their health are likely to be correct. It turns out things that can be negatively perceived like stress don't necessarily harm us, but perceiving them negatively does. This applies to conflict as well. Conflict in and of itself isn't harmful. It's how we perceive and experience it that can be harmful. When we approach it from a place of fear, conflict quickly becomes destructive and escalates out of our control. So the questions remain, how do we view conflict positively, and how can we shift our perception of conflict from fearful to positive? Let's talk about a positive perception of conflict. When we view conflict positively, we remove the fear and instead see it as something constructive, full of opportunities, and essential to a growing relationship. With this mindset, we start saying things like, conflict can change when I change. I am empowered to transform conflict. Others in this conflict matter as much to me as myself. When you start seeing conflict this way, you begin to see the other person's needs again and are not just focused on self-preservation. This is called an I-thou relationship, where their needs, fears, hopes, and humanity truly matter to you. Their needs are just as important as yours in this conflict, and it's not just about you. The key to changing our perception of conflict is changing how we view our partner in conflict. Think about that for a moment, and I'll say it again. The key to changing our perception of conflict is changing how we view our partner in conflict. This isn't always easy, but it's definitely achievable. One of the most powerful ways to shift your perspective is to pause and consider your partner's side of the story. Take a moment, breathe, and remind yourself to approach this with an open mind. To guide this shift, ask yourself these questions. What is my partner afraid of? What are they feeling in this conflict? What story am I telling myself about my partner? Is it true? What does love look like right now? If I were in their shoes, how would I want to be treated? Am I choosing connection or protection? Do I have the courage to care about their needs as much as my own? Am I willing to see this conflict as ours to solve, not just mine to win? These questions can be tough, and answering them honestly is not always easy, but do it anyway. They're designed to be bold and to cut through the noise of self-justification and shake you out of the self-preservation mindset, where it's you against them. Instead, they help shift you into a perspective of love, where you are facing conflict together. Once you make this shift, your mindset changes from me versus them to us versus it being the conflict. By removing fear from the equation, you gain back the ability to solve problems together. You realize your partner isn't the bad guy, and the conflict isn't massive, it's just a problem to be solved, which becomes manageable when you work as a team. I find it helpful to imagine conflict like this. You and your partner are on the outer ring, holding hands, looking down at the conflict which is in the middle. You see it not as something that separates you, you're still connected by your hands, but as something that can bring you together. It's not a threat to your relationship, but a challenge you can face side by side. With both partners seeing the conflict from two perspectives and surrounding it, you can work together to find a solution. Solving conflict is a process, but it becomes so much easier when you and your partner are doing it together. These small shifts from self-preservation to love are powerful. They create a new space where constant fighting turns into opportunities for connection and growth as you face conflict side by side. Positively dealing with conflict is a lesson we all need to remember. And as we have the courage to lead from a place of love instead of fear, it becomes something that is actually helpful in a relationship. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to tune in next week where we're diving into how to de-escalate conflict in your relationship. In the meantime, I'd love to hear what stood out to you from today or any aha moments you had. So drop them in the comments, and thanks again for being here.